Welcome back to the Nutrition Daddy broadcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mitch Kahn. Sorry it took so long to get this video out, but there's a lot of information here, and you're really going to like this video. It's going to take time. It might actually be cut in two videos, but a lot of information here. This is going to be part 4 of our series on vitamins, and basically this particular video will explain hopefully what you can do to improve your health conditions. So let's get started. I'm going to read some articles to you, and to me this is absolutely fascinating stuff. I love this stuff. This is what got me into nutrition in the first place. Let's start off by reading some articles. Okay. This one is called Nutritional Decline in the Food Supply. Nutrient decline in the food supply. So we're going to talk a little bit here. Let's see. This is research that was done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they compiled a bunch of data on the nutritional content of food since the 1800s. And this particular research, I think, was finished in 1999. Yep, 1999. Let's move on here. It says nutritional decline in garden crops. And I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. Indeed, the data shows a decline that is rather alarming. When you consider how difficult it is to get a child to eat broccoli, it is disheartening to discover that they really need to eat about 50% more of it these days. They did a research on a whole bunch of different vegetables and fruits. Here we're talking about broccoli and how much nutritional value it has and how it's gone down significantly. We're talking big time here. The calcium content in broccoli now, and this is in 1999, so this is back, about 15 years ago. It's actually worse today. Calcium down 60%. There's 60% less calcium in broccoli than there was in 1950. All right, less riboflavin, less iron, less vitamin C, less phosphorus, and then the list would go on and on. Although they don't test every single thing, but they test a lot of things. Let's move on. Researchers at the University of Texas at Austin examined the data published by the USDA in 1999 for small garden crops, adjusting the data for the water content of food. And there's a whole bunch of graphs which I'm going to post up here, so you can take a look at all the graphs. There's a lot of different foods. Very, very interesting stuff. A little disheartening. Alright, and they found that a statistically significant decline in protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, and vitamin C. They argue that there's no evidence for soil depletion hypotheses. In other words, they're trying to figure out why this is happening. They're saying it's not really soil related, they don't think, which is total BS. It is soil related, but there's other things involved, which we'll talk about in a minute. This hypothesis suggests that when modern farm fertilizers add commercial, they call it NPK fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that's what that stands for, without replacing the broad spectrum of nutrients in the healthy soil, plants have less nutrition to take up from the soil now than they did a decade ago or decades ago. Researchers point to the fact that both protein and phosphorus are part of the commercial NPK fertilizer package, and yet both have declined. So they're like, well, we're putting it in the soil, but the plants aren't absorbing it, so it's not our fault, it's not the soil, it must be something else. But as we spoke on the last 3 videos about vitamins, they're replacing this nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. This is all fake stuff. It's not organic. The soil produces obviously organic nutrients, nutrition, and so forth. They're adding artificial nutrition in the form of nitrogen and so forth, artificial fertilizers, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, yeah, of course it's not really helpful, but they're saying, that has nothing to do with it. Why would phosphorus decline if it is being added to the soil? Well, I just told you why. The researchers argue that any one plant may take up only so much phosphorus when the plant has been bred to produce a large vegetable. So this is what they're explaining why they feel that, well, their explanation may be true also, but there's more than one reason for this. We're producing larger vegetables. The farmer's yield increases because the weight of the crop is increased, but the same amount of phosphorus is distributed across the same larger vegetable, making each bite of this new crop less nourishing. In general, anytime that commercial seed is selected based on factors that make a crop profitable, they're talking about yield and pest resistance, which makes it more profitable if it's bigger and resists, pests and so forth. There will be a trade-off in other characteristics, i.e. nutrition, okay? So basically they're saying the reason why these vegetables are basically less healthy is because they're larger. In other words, the same piece of broccoli would be larger now than it was 50 years ago. It would be smaller, more condensed, so there's more nutrition in it, which is only a fraction of the story. It's a little piece of that story. So the strategies they talk about here, how to increase nutritional density in the foods, they say eat heirloom produce. Now heirlooms, for most of you probably don't know what they are. I didn't really know until recently. An heirloom vegetable simply means that it's been around for over 50 years and that its seeds are true. In other words, they produce the same item every season. Season after season, it's the same vegetable or fruit. Heirlooms have not been selected for commercial cultivation and bred for pest resistance or yield and other things. This is your grandmother's spinach. In other words, these are the original seeds, or much more original than they are now. They haven't been altered and genetically changed around like the more modern seeds. They're called heirloom seeds, and that's one of their suggestions. This way you get more nutrition in your food. Another thing they suggest is composting your garden. For those of you who don't know what composting is, basically it's like adding fertilizer, so that there's more nutritional factors in the soil. So that makes sense, right? So let's go on to the next article. Now, this one's very interesting, and I'll add the graphs, as I said, onto this video. If you're listening to this on audio, unfortunately you won't see them, but you can always look it up on the internet. There's plenty of articles, and we're going to go over a few more. So this was in Life Extension magazine in 2005. It says vitamin less vegetables. In 2001 we reported on vitamin drains in American vegetables. They go on to say here, from food to commodity. Tomatoes that resemble tennis balls, peppers that taste like small rocks, and big red flavorless strawberries are all a result of selective breeding for pith and water. And pith is defined as that fibrous material that's part of the fruits and vegetables, like the netting around an orange. That's usually thrown away, like that white fibrous kind of stuff. Yeah. Desirable traits for commercial growers who want to produce to ship well, look good, and weigh a lot, but undesirable traits for consumers who buy produce as a source of nutrition. So it's desirable for the people growing this stuff and not very desirable for us who are consuming it. Plant jockeys call it the dilution effect. More water and pith and less vitamin content. In other words, they're basically diluted with water. So they pick these types of seeds that are grown that will weigh more, so they'll cost more. There's a lot more to it. I mean, they're harder on the outside, so they don't get squashed in shipping, like these tomatoes with these really thick skins. And they just keep altering these foods around until they get it just right, and they can get the highest price for the produce. And their thing is not vitamins or nutritional value. They don't care about that. That's all comes later, and that's not their thing. Their thing is how to make the most money. So the transformation of vegetables from food to commodity is well illustrated by the one people love to hate: broccoli. Here we go, everyone's picking on broccoli here. Broccoli is a terrific source of calcium, especially for people who don't drink milk. But the most prized commercial version of broccoli is a heavy calcium magnesium deficient hybrid called Marathon. In research conducted by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Marathon is consistently about a third lower in calcium calcium and magnesium than our other hybrids. 1/3 less calcium and magnesium. And the hybrids themselves are about half, 50% less calcium than the broccoli listed in the 1998 USDA nutritional database. It has been reported that the calcium and magnesium content in commercially grown broccoli sold in grocery stores can vary twofold. What it's saying here basically is the most common broccoli now that they make is called Marathon, and it has basically almost no calcium in it. So you hear, oh, calcium, there's a lot of calcium in broccoli. It varies tremendously. That's what they're saying. It depends on what type of broccoli it is, where it's from, and so forth. So you may think that you're getting all these nutritional, benefits from broccoli, but you're not. And just incidentally, everybody listening and watching, do you guys remember back in the day when broccoli tasted really bad? Like it was bitter and it was like yuck, and your parents basically had to force you to eat it. Not today. If you notice, broccoli actually has a little bit of a sweet taste. It doesn't taste bad at all. Not by accident. It's been bred that way. Same thing with Brussels sprouts. They used to also have a very hard taste to them. Not anymore. Now they kind of taste sweet. Well, there's a trade-off. When they're producing these vegetables that might taste a little better to our taste buds, you're sacrificing a lot of nutritional value. Just something to think about. Selective breeding again. Here we go. Prematurely picked produce. Now this is a big one too. Very, very important. The dilution effect is not the only thing causing problems in nutritional content. Dilution effect was when there's more water and more of the fibrous tissue. Okay. Most commercial fruit, including tomatoes, is picked green. They pick it when it's still green. Green fruit doesn't have a chance to sun ripen. It's artificially ripened with ethylene, a natural plant hormone. Ethylene is what causes tomatoes to turn pinkish. Produce deprived of sunlight doesn't have a chance to develop sunlight-related nutritional values such as anthocyanins, the flavonoids that make cherries red and grapes purple. Anthocyanins are plant sunscreens. When humans ingest them, they provide protection against DNA damage, brain cell deterioration, cancer, and more. So obviously this is something pretty important for us to be eating, and it's not in the foods anymore, at least when they're picked green. Other plant vitamins can also be affected by premature picking. Researchers in Spain conducted an in-depth investigation of cherries ripened and found 14 different stages of ripening for these cherries, okay? During which the fruit turned from green, which is probably 1, to really pretty red, which is probably stage 14. They concluded that for maximum nutrition, cherries should be picked at least at stage 12, way beyond the stage at which they're harvested green by commercial growers. To illustrate how important the ripening process is, if cherries are picked at stage 8, their vitamin C content is half the amount it is if it's picked at stage 14. Half. Similarly, researchers at Oregon State University who studied blackberries discovered that green ones contain 74 milligrams of anthocyanins compared to 317 milligrams in ripe ones. Big, big difference. 74 milligrams compared to 317 milligrams when it's picked ripe. The same phenomenon occurs in other fruits as well. Polyphenols likewise have no chance to fully develop when produce is picked green, which is why green picked produce is so tasteless. Besides having health benefits, polyphenols give produce its flavor. Tomatoes deprived of UV sunlight can be drained of carotenoids and possess little antioxidant activity. That's not good. It's suspected that the lack of folate in grocery store tomatoes is due to their being picked green. In other words, well, all these foods are being picked, these vegetables and fruits are being picked green. People who are doing this, the companies don't really care much about the nutritional value, obviously. I mean, there's a huge, huge difference between letting these things ripen on the vine and picking them early when they're still green. Bananas are an obvious one. Bananas are always green in the store, and then they spray them probably with these polyphenols or whatever they're using to make it turn yellow. it's the nutritional value, like potassium and so forth, is much lower as a result of that. So why do they do it? Why would they pick them green? Well, again, it has to do with money. You know, it takes time to ship these things. They're also generally harder when they're still green. If they're fully ripe, they tend to be softer. They can damage in shipping more. People see them in a store. You know, you're not going to pick, and I'm guilty of this too. I've been made fun of. You know, you want to pick the prettiest piece of fruit or vegetable there. You don't want the ones that are all blackened and, you know, mashed up. So the producers of these foods obviously know that, and that's one of the reasons they do what they do, and they selectively breed stuff that will hold up during shipment, you know, when it's being shipped from wherever the farm is. Let's move on to the next one. All right, here we go. It's from the Examiner, examiner.com, which is just, it's a website online. I just thought it was interesting. This is from 2011. The nutrition of today's vegetables are lacking. So let's talk about this here. The researchers, this is from another, actually it's based on the research we're going to talk about towards the end here. Researchers selected 39 vegetables, 3 melons, and strawberries. They tested them for 13 different nutrients and water. The fruits and vegetables had less calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, ascorbic acid or vitamin C, they mean, and protein. They found that broccoli, for example, had 37% less calcium. We already talked about that than 60 years ago. Winter squash had 52% less riboflavin. And that's just in that one. We're going to move on to Scientific America here. And this was in Scientific America in 2011. It was a question to them, and I like the question, so I'm going to read it. What's the nutritional difference between the carrot I ate in 1970 and one I eat today? I've heard that there's very little nutrition left. Is that true? And this is the answer that was given. It would be a little overkill to say that carrots you eat today have very little nutrition in it, especially compared to some of the other less healthy foods you like also to eat. In other words, they're comparing it to really junk food. But it is true that fruits and vegetables grown decades ago were much richer in vitamins and minerals than the varieties most of us get today. The main culprit in this disturbing nutritional trend is soil depletion, which contradicts what we read in the beginning. Modern intensive agricultural methods have stripped increasing amounts of nutrition from the soil in which the food we eat grows. Sadly, each successive generation of fast-growing, pest-resistant carrot is truly less good for you than the one before. True, and soil is a big part of it. It's not the only thing. It's a combination of many issues, but that is truly one of them. This is from Mother Earth News, and it was in 2012. Here it is. Evidence continues to accumulate that our industrial food system is not serving us well when it comes to the nutritional value of food. True, American agribusiness has given us one of the cheapest food supplies in the world, but science reveals this food is cheap in more ways than one. And they go on to say, here are some of the things we know at this point. And I'm just going to skip to this part here. It says, wheat, like wheat that we use for bread, grown 100 years ago, had twice as much protein as modern varieties. Twice as much protein. Major declines in protein and several other nutrients have been documented in modern corn varieties. Now they're talking about corn. Now we know corn, excuse me, is one of the big hybrids, huge hybrids out there. Let's talk about corn for a minute. Corn, in this comparison, this research, protein, almost half as much protein as it had, let's say, several years back. Fiber, less than half. Niacin, less than half. Riboflavin, like 75% less. Thiamine, half. Vitamin E, 75% less. Copper, about 30% less. Iron, half. Phosphorus, about 75% less. And zinc, almost none in corn, as compared to how it was excuse me, once upon a time. So minerals, specifically trace minerals, are basically disappearing, which is a big problem, which I've been finding in a lot of patients lately also. It's just not in the soil anymore. And let's move on to the lower part here. It says similar declines are also being documented in meat, eggs, dairy products. Um, Compared with industrial products, foods from animals raised on pastures are consistently richer in vitamin A, D, E, beta carotene, and beneficial fatty acids. So in other words, the factory farmed meats, if you're not a vegetarian and you eat meats, much richer, much better for you from animals that graze, that go out on the pasture and they eat food basically from grass on their own. Prominent biochemist Bruce Ames argues that many Americans are not getting enough essential vitamins and minerals, and that the health consequences of these dietary deficiencies, like increased cancer and accelerated aging, should be taken far more seriously than other problems like pesticides residual in our foods. I agree to a point, although I've personally found that pesticides are quite a problem as well, and can't like just get, make believe they don't exist. We need to tackle all these problems. So here's the last one. World Watch Institute, this is from 2013. Crop yields expand, but nutrition is left behind. Oh, let's see what this is about. Okay, farmers today can grow 2 to 3 times as much grain, fruit, and vegetables on a plot of land as they could 50 years ago. But the nutritional quality of many crops has declined, according to a new report from the Organic Center, a group based in Boulder, Colorado. Less nutrition per calorie consumed affects consumers in much the same way as monetary inflation. That is, we have more food, but it's worth less in terms of nutritional value. So in other words, like inflation, with inflation, $1 is worth a lot less than it was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, for 2 pennies, you could buy a piece of gum. Today, a piece of gum is like 50 cents. Same situation with food, more or less. Although we have more food, it has less nutritional value. And researchers from Washington State University, who analyzed 63 spring wheat cultivators grown between, cultivars, types of wheat grown between 1842 and 2003, found an 11% decline in iron content, a 16% decline in copper, a 25% decline in zinc, and a 50% decline in selenium. Again, we're talking about trace minerals really dropping off badly. Not a good thing. So they go on to talk about organic farming methods, which yield a much higher nutritional content food, and so forth. So that's what that's talking about. Good. So let's try to make all sense out of all of this. All right. So the reason that I'm adding this video or audio, if you're listening, to the end of the videos and audios on vitamins is because the answer lies in what I've just gone over. The answer, one of the major answers, lies in getting food that actually has nutritional value. Now, when you get food that doesn't have much nutritional value, like what we're just talking about, your body craves certain nutrients, right? Like if it needs vitamin C or whatever, there's a craving for that. Like women know this with craving for chocolate, for manganese and magnesium and other things, right? They like certain times of the month, some women really need certain foods. Well, that's because your body needs those nutrients, right? Does that make sense? Good. So, what I'm getting at here is one of the reasons why we're so overweight and obese in this country is because people eat and eat and eat, but they don't feel satisfied. They don't feel like, okay, I feel like I ate a good meal. I feel really good about it. That's not what's happening. What's happening is you eat, you still feel hungry. You just don't feel, your body feels like it needs more food. This is one of the reasons. Because even though you're eating, even if you're eating a so-called good diet, a lot of times, like we're going, you have a salad every day, you eat some vegetables, some fruits, you think you're eating great. Bad news, those vegetables and fruits don't have the same nutritional content that they did 50 years ago. You have to eat almost twice as much. So you'd have to eat double the salads, double the fruits, or whatever it is, in order to get the same nutritional value in some of the vitamins that are missing, some of the minerals that are missing. Some of them don't even, they hardly exist, or they don't exist anymore in these foods. So that's a big, big problem, and that is one of the reasons I see that people overeat. How do I know this? Simple. I give them certain supplements, food-based supplements, like we talked about earlier in the videos, and all of a sudden they start losing weight. They don't have the same hunger that they used to have. They don't have to eat as much. You know, they feel better in all kinds of ways. A lot of times the symptoms go. That's how you know. So there's another solution to all this, and the other solution is a big question I had gotten from several people. You know, why should I eat organic food? What is the benefit of organic food? Why should I waste my time or money trying to get it and spending the extra money on food that's grown organically? And this is the reason. These articles, they explain it in black and white, sometimes in color. Anyway, the reason to eat organic is because organic foods are grown in much healthier soils. They're not grown in soils that are constantly abused, they're overused. They're growing these special seeds that basically grow really fast. The roots don't go deep. They don't get the nutritional value. And there's all kinds of pesticides and chemicals mixed into the soil to keep the soil going. It's basically dead soil. It's like the vitamins we talked about earlier. It's not living. When you get organic food, it's from living, breathing soil. It's dark soil, it's healthy soil. You could look at it and you can tell. If you look at a farm that grows factory type farming methods and stuff that we talked about in these articles versus a farm that grows organic, it's day and night. Day and night. You could tell almost immediately just by looking at the soil, you know, which is which. It's that obvious. So, the answer to the question that I get a lot, why buy organic and is it really different? The answer is yes. In fact, it's absolutely yes. There's a huge difference, just as we just outlined. Those foods from the 1950s are basically the same foods that we have today when they're grown organically. They're heirloom seeds in most cases. They're not modified seeds. They're not genetically altered or changed. They're the basic seeds from when your grandparents ate. That's why organic is so important. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I always eat organic or whatever. I don't. You know, I don't. Because unfortunately I eat out quite a bit. I don't eat at home a lot. But in a perfect world, in an ideal situation, organic is definitely the way to go. If you can do it, do it. It will make a big difference. You may not feel it immediately, but over time you will notice the difference. That's my suggestion, and that's one of the major answers for what to do instead of buying these crappy supplements in all the stores. Spend your money on quality food. That's where you need to spend your money, and that is the real solution. Alright, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about a book. This book is from the 90s. It's called Empty Harvest. It's from two authors. One's name is Bernard Jensen. He passed away a few years ago. Phenomenal nutritionist. Love the guy. His work is fantastic. Another author, his name is Mark Anderson. He's still around. Another great nutritionist. Wonderful guy. Great book. Highly recommended. It goes into soil depletion, why it's so important, why our immune systems are failing us, why we're getting so sick, these chronic diseases, and a lot of it is related to the soil the food's grown in, as I just went over. A lot of it is explained in this book. Very highly recommended. We're going to end off here in a second. I hope you guys learned a lot from what I'm talking about. This stuff is key. What I'm talking about now is really, really important. If you can't get organic foods, if it's a hassle, it's expensive, whatever, the alternative is to get supplements that are made from foods. That's what I do. It's not easy for me at this point to get a lot of organic food in my diet, so I take a lot of organic food supplements, and that's what I give my patients. So in a perfect world, you would just eat foods that have everything in it. We don't live in a perfect world, as all of you know. So that's why we supplement. So I hope I answered a lot of your questions. Any comments, anything else you want to know, you can always reach me. You can email me or call me in my office. I'm always happy to hear from you. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat